when you get it to a gold standard, well, you can always get off the gold standard, right? So you can say, well, right now we have a war to fight. We have World War II. So we're gonna stop this gold standard that we have, or World War I, and we're gonna stop the gold standard. We're just gonna print money because we have to fight it. We have to win the war, right? So we're gonna just continue fighting the war everybody's gonna have to accept this paper money, and that's really been going on really since the Civil War, right? So in the Civil War, that's really when they started this concept of greenbacks, and they sort of said, well, we got this new money. It's the US dollar. It's not backed by anything. We're not redeeming it for gold, but you guys have to accept it. And maybe it'll be redeemable in the future. And actually, 5 years after the Civil War, they did start redeeming it again. They said, no, we're kind of going back to a gold standard. So my worry is that, people are going to start, they're going to sort of slowly transition to, we have a Bitcoin standard, right? And the government holds X amount of Bitcoin, and the dollar is redeemable for Bitcoin at such and such a rate. Until it's not, right? Until we say, yeah, we actually are fighting a war with China now, and we can't redeem those dollars for Bitcoin anymore. So, at the end of the day, Bitcoin solves this directly. You don't need a second currency that's backed by Bitcoin. We can just use Bitcoin. And that's really the power of Bitcoin. That's what separates it from gold. Because gold can't really be used very, very efficiently to back anything. It takes literally a month right now to get your gold out of the Bank of England. So it's not efficient to move gold in and out of these vaults. It doesn't work. But to move Bitcoin, it's 10 minutes. So, that's the major difference between gold and Bitcoin. And that's why I think the word standard is kind of dangerous. Whenever you say, I'm going on a standard, well, that means you can go off the standard. But if you actually hold Bitcoin, either you hold the coins or you don't. You can verify that you hold the coins or you don't. And I think that's why Bitcoin is going to ultimately be worth, many, many multiples of what gold's worth. And so we really have X kind of time in front of us if we look at this thing over a 10 or 20 year range. So
a financial evolution that mirrors the early days of Apple or Amazon is on the verge of happening with Bitcoin, predicts Fred Krueger. Digital currency is on the verge of redefining wealth management. The stock market has been buzzing with news from Wall Street veteran Fred Krueger, who offers an optimistic picture of Bitcoin's future. There is a fundamental shift in how wealth is perceived and accumulated, stresses Krueger. Set against the backdrop of major players like BlackRock and Fidelity entering the arena, Bitcoin is no longer the elusive digital treasure reserved only for tech-savvy investors. Welcome back, everyone, to Investocracy Crypto.
Really, you have something that's perfect money, which is Bitcoin, which is going to do fantastic over long periods of time. Just guaranteed to do absolutely fantastic. Everything else is kind of risky. And so you have this sort of spectrum, right? On one hand, you have Bitcoin, which is perfect money, which is fantastic. And that should be how you measure your success in life, right? So, British hodl, one of my fellow Bitcoiners always says, you just got to get to one Bitcoin. That's your goal, right? So I think if you're young, when I was in college, I was completely broke. In grad school, I was completely broke, and I couldn't possibly imagine having $100,000 in cash, which is one Bitcoin today. So I get it when people are like, "Well, I can only have one Bitcoin. It's crazy money," but that should be an objective for you to get to that one Bitcoin level. And there's under 1 million people on this planet who have one Bitcoin. So I would say that's really your goalpost, is to get to one Bitcoin. Once you got one Bitcoin, you've got some success in life. You exit a company, you're part of some startup, you're in a high paying position. You can try to get to 10 Bitcoin, right? And that's sort of that's sort of the next kind of level, right? You're going to have to be a little bit more lucky. You have to make the right moves. That's 100 Bitcoin. The next, probably the final level you would ever get to, if you're ever lucky, is 1,000 Bitcoin. I'm just a little bit below that. right now. But it's sort of like 100 Bitcoin is a great level. It's a kind of a dream level to get to, and I think that means pretty much your financial future is guaranteed for the rest of your life, and for your children's life. It's enough for you and your progeny to go on. So that's the way I see the financial stuff. I see it's very simple. You just invest in Bitcoin. You don't time it. You don't go in and out. You can look at it. Right now, Bitcoin's just not very interesting. It's not doing anything. It's very, very steady. It's sitting around 97, 96,000. Hasn't done anything for 6 weeks. And that's Bitcoin. But part of being a Bitcoiner is you don't trade your Bitcoin. You don't sell your Bitcoin. You don't buy your Bitcoin. You don't get too caught up in like options on Bitcoin or MicroStrategy or options on MicroStrategy or any of these things. You just hold your Bitcoin. Now, if you want to hold an ETF, hold an ETF. If you want to hold your Bitcoin in cold storage, hold your Bitcoin in cold storage. Both are fine, right? If you're just starting out, use a mobile wallet. Just if you don't have very much Bitcoin, you can hold it in a mobile wallet. By the way, you can hold your Bitcoin in Phantom Wallet.
Krueger likens Bitcoin's current state to being in the first inning of a decades-long game. Sounds too good to be true, maybe, but that's the kind of excitement that makes stock market conversations worth having. The entry of institutional capital is compelling evidence that the game's rules are changing. Consider this. If millionaires and billionaires up their stakes from a minuscule 0.01% to a modest 2%, the result would be equivalent to the opening of floodgates for Bitcoin. The launch of Bitcoin ETFs, like BlackRock's IBIT and Fidelity's FBTC, has made investing more accessible than ever before.
And so, as this network of Bitcoin believers grow, all the other parts of this world grow. So fiat rails grow, exchanges grow, banks grow. We're going to see in the U.S. the ability to take your dollars in your bank account and get USDC, and then take that USDC and swap it for Bitcoin, or take Bitcoin, swap it for USDC, and then move it back to Bitcoin to the bank system, or even maybe buy Bitcoin directly in your bank. So all these things are coming, and all of these things contribute to the network effect of Bitcoin. So what about scarcity? Okay, so scarcity is really a necessary, but it's not a sufficient condition. So if something's not scarce, it's not going to stay valuable for long. So there was this island of Yap in Micronesia, and they had these Yap stones, which were very scarce because there was a very limited supply of this limestone that was needed to make them. And so then it was hand delivered from some other island. And so they carve it and they make these Yap stones. But eventually the British came around and they realized that they could just take a steamer and move some of these Yap stones in. And then all of a sudden, they had their local currency. And so the price of the Yap stone, the value of Yap stones kind of went down. So, scarcity is needed, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. So if you look at, Bitcoin Cash, it has almost the same code base as Bitcoin. Same with Bitcoin SV and all the other forks of Bitcoin. But because they have the same code base or close to the same code base, it doesn't mean they have the network effect. So, in 2017, at the end of 2017, when we forked over to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, we had sort of a VH1 versus Betamax situation. And Bitcoin Cash ended up being Betamax. Is it better? I don't know. You could argue maybe that the bigger blocks would have been fine. You can argue the opposite. It doesn't matter because the world chose VHS. The world standardized on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Cash ended up not really working. And the Bitcoin Cash relative to Bitcoin is a straight line down. So the flaw in thinking about scarcity is you're looking at a necessary and not sufficient condition. So this entire stock to flow model that was popular, actually starting in around 2019, was basing everything off of scarcity. And, you know, Giovanni sensed this was flawed. Others sensed it was flawed. Corey Klippstein sensed it was flawed. And, now the model is clearly mathematically broken, completely mathematically broken, doesn't hold up. It was changed, it was tweaked, but it was conceptually broken right from the start because scarcity is not what drives value. What drives value is the network. And so that's really the key.
Instead of navigating the complex world of crypto exchanges, investors can now allocate to Bitcoin using familiar financial channels. One might question Krueger's analysis as a high net worth individual with Bitcoin, but this isn't child's play. Krueger's analogy of real estate, bonds, and overpriced stocks as just waiting for a Bitcoin of relief speaks to a massive reshaping of investment portfolios. But before going any further, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
And if you think about it, nobody is buying Bitcoin just because we hit one Zeta hash. It doesn't matter to the average person buying it. Just think of some guy in China buying Bitcoin. He's not going, let's check the hash rate today. Hash rate's higher. I'm going to pay more for that Bitcoin. No, that's not what you're doing at all. It's just you're going to be going into the network, whatever the network price is, and you're going to be buying it at that price. So at the end of the day, what's driving all of this is we have a network effect of end users. And so, it's every single day, there's some new person, some new Fred Krueger that's coming in and going, wow, this Bitcoin thing really makes sense. It's magic almost. And, I can put Bitcoin out of government control. Lots and lots of people seem to be adopting this. The Satoshi origin story is amazing. The more I find out about it, the more I love it. I get these 12 words or these 24 words, and I can hold my Bitcoin, and I can walk across borders and everything. And it just works, right? And it 100% works. I learned how to send Bitcoin, like Gladiator just recently learned. And it's magic. Once you really understand it and it hits you, you're like, oh wow, I love this. And that's why Ben and I wrote this big Bitcoin book, because we just really felt like we had this kind of magic philosophical stone that we were just, we totally love Bitcoin, okay? And that story just gets spread. It's sort of like a meme idea, right? It's like, some of these ideas like democracy were like that, right? These ideas spread. They spread really in France, right? In the salon of the 18th century, and you had the philosophers, they call them, that were basically spreading these ideas of democracy. And then it just kind of spread, and it spread and spread and spread and spread. And then eventually people said, okay, we should get rid of the king, and eventually we should chop off his head, and we should rule ourselves. So democracy is one of those ideas. I mean, whether you like it or not, I think some of these religions are those ideas. Christianity, Islam. These are these ideas. They spread their idea viruses, and I feel like Bitcoin is that kind of idea virus.
With Bitcoin's promising horizon, one cannot help but reflect, is now the time to be part of this financial revolution? Fred Krueger's optimism isn't just a call to pay attention, it's a proclamation for a long-term outlook. So what do you think? Is Bitcoin heading towards the beginning of a new financial era? Leave your thoughts and feedback below. And finally, if you would like to know more about cryptocurrencies or specifically Bitcoin, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.